Great. Thank you so much for joining us for the fifth WEPs Deep Dive Series session of 2024. My name is Miwa Park, and I am the WEPs Coordinator at Women's Empowerment Principles Global Secretariat here at UN Women. So in today's webinar, we are zooming into intersectionality. Intersectionality refers to the ways in which multiple forms of inequality exacerbates one another to create obstacle not often widely understood or visible within conventional ways of thinking. So learning about intersectionality can facilitate a deeper understanding of the ways in which diversity, equality, and inclusion are relevant to each person in the organization. So I hope today's session helps you to understand intersectionality and hope how you could incorporate an intersectional lens into your business. So let me go through today's agenda. So firstly, we will hear from Anna Felt, Global Head of the WEPs Global Secretariat at UN Women for her opening remarks. Then I will hand it over to our colleague from Brazil Country Office, Ana Claudia Jaqueto Pereira, to talk about the definition and basics of intersectionality. Then I'll go ahead and present on intersectionality with some lens with diversity and inclusion. Then we'll also hear from a web signatory company from India, Aditya Birla Capital, to hear from how they have been integrating intersectional approach to promote diversity and inclusion in their company's context. With this backdrop, I'll then take over the stage again to introduce some of the WEPs tools that can support your company's intersectional approach. Then move on to the roundtable and Q&A session with the panelists. So here are some logistical reminders. So please feel free to write your questions to the panelists in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the webinar. If you'd like to communicate with other participants, please use the chat function as you're doing really well right now. Your questions will be answered during the Q&A session or throughout the chat anytime. We will try to answer all of them. Also, I wanted to remind you that this webinar is being recorded and later will be uploaded to WEPs.org website to be shared with the general public. Lastly, we will have a short evaluation survey that will pop up when you are leaving. So please take the time to answer it. We really do take a look at the result to improve our future contents. So now to get us started, I'd like to invite Anna to deliver her opening remarks. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Miwa, and welcome everyone. Happy Juneteenth for those joining from the US. I saw there was a number, so thanks for joining us on a holiday. Today's session, as Miwa was saying, focuses on intersectionality. And taking an intersectional approach is important because it gives you a comprehensive understanding on how various social identities and systems of discrimination intersect and influence each other. You probably heard, if this is not your first webinar with us, you probably heard that we've been saying that implementing the women's empowerment principles, you cannot have one size fits all approach. So this session is about giving you an idea what that means, and we are unpacking that a bit. Because intersectionality gives us an holistic understanding. It helps us consider multiple dimensions of identity, such as race, gender, class, sexuality, disability, and more. Recognizing that individual experience of these aspects simultaneously and that they shape each other. So it is about knowing your current and potential employees. It's about knowing your current and potential suppliers, knowing your current and potential consumers and clients, and knowing your community members. So it is about consultation, understanding, surveying to better understand who your stakeholders are for your company. Once you know your stakeholders, you will be able to make more informed decisions. It helps you tackle systemic discrimination in the workplace, marketplace, and community. It also helps you to develop practices and policies that are inclusive and equitable. For example, about workplace policies and practices and initiatives that fit your talent, that you are not developing these initiatives without consultation and knowing who your stakeholders are. Do your employees need specific support or considerations depending on their social identities, for example? Could that kind of support also help at the same time attract and retain the best talent in the market? And if you plan to purchase new products or services, already knowing the strengths and gaps of your pool of suppliers and potential suppliers in the market also leads to better decision making. And did you know, for example, that the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the US are minority women, particularly Black women? So it is an opportunity to look into these groups and see what's in it for your company. Finally, recognizing the diverse and intersecting identities of individuals around you, your stakeholders, empowers them by validating the experiences and fostering a deeper sense of belonging and identity. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we will have today. We will have experience from Brazil and from India, and we'll hear a little bit more on how intersectionality shows up in different contexts, in different countries, and different companies. So back to you, Miwa, and I hope we will learn a lot today, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ana. And now I'll introduce you to today's panelists. So we have Ana Claudia Jaqueto Pereira that I mentioned. She's a program analyst at UN Women Office in Brazil, and her specialty is in intersectionality. Then we have myself, and we move on to Kalpita. Kalpita Ashok Dalvia, sorry, is she's Aditya Birla Capital's Diversity, Equality, and Equity Inclusion team members. She leads the charge in driving transformative change through extensive research and engagement with banking, financial services, and insurance companies, and non-bank financial companies. With a full-blown commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion, Kalpita collaborates closely with organizational leaders to champion the significance of D&I, attending conferences and cultivating relationships with diverse community. She's a computer science graduate and holds a postgraduate degree from Chaitana's Institute of Management and Research in Mumbai, India. So basically, I'm going to start the presentation by giving the floor to Ana Claudia, but let me switch my screen a little quick, so give me some time, please.
Okay. So, let's start.
So Ana Claudia, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. Thanks, Mia and Anna, for the invitation to share this moment with you. I really appreciate the chance to talk to such a broad audience and to contribute to this debate and practice. So I work in the Brazil country office as a program analyst, mostly on public policy, and I have a PhD in political science, and I have extensively studied intersectionality. So I hope this can be useful to you. I will give you a brief overview of the origins of this idea of intersectionality, and then with me, I will go into more concrete uses and possibilities for application. So the origin of this term is it was first used by the lawyer and the US lawyer and activist Kimberly Crenshaw in the context of discussion of violence against Black women. So she was considering and exploring how the white women would have greater visibility in terms of domestic violence. She was talking about how Black men would be considered were more likely to receive charges against domestic violence. And in the intersect of all this, as you say, were Black women, because they were not being seen by the justice systems as the victims of this phenomenon. So she offered this term. Actually, she was the first one to use the word, but not the idea, right? Because for years, social movements had been especially spearheaded by Black women in the US. But I'm sure we can find examples in all different contexts. The women were very vocal about the types of violence and discriminations they were facing. So what she did was to put a label on that and to talk about very concrete experiences and structures, social structures. So you can see, why did I bring that to you today? The idea is not to have like a more scholarly discussion. It's to show that intersectionality comes from practice, comes from the search for concrete solutions and to reach a broader audience, a broader public. So you can, when you think it started like that, and it travels very well to many contexts from there, it traveled to academia, where it's being extensively studied and discussed as a concept, as a tool. I will talk to you, but most Black women who are still working with the term will prefer to say intersectionality is a tool for transforming the reality. You can also use it to describe, of course, the realities tied to identity. I can talk as a Brazilian Black woman, I have one identity, a woman from Qatar in their different configurations will have a different identity, but we're not talking about only individual identities, we're also talking about social identities, social groups, and we'll see why this is important. Next, please. So this is a little picture that will help us to see what we refer to when we talk about intersectionality. I took this from UN Women report on the development and the situation of women in the world. And then it was talking about how we need to look at the different intersections of the discriminations to make sure that all policies address. But we don't need to talk only about discrimination, right? We can talk about more inclusive, more diverse spaces. They are also interconnected. It's the other side of these stories and of the discrimination disadvantages we want to overcome. So I just wanted to add this because this is also speaks, this picture also speaks of the diversity and how we will need to adjust our lenses of intersectionality to each different context or country or maybe even city. Because in one city, religion may be an issue and a basis for discriminations. HIV status may be a question, an issue that is subject people to exclusion or not being considered in the initiatives, in their business initiative, but in others it will not. Family status will be more important. So what I like about intersectionality is that these are lenses we can apply to different contexts. Next slide, please. So how do we go into the more concrete aspect of the work? So how do I know if I'm doing an intersectional work? I mean, we all have good intentions, right? I mean, I want to have a more diverse team. I want to select from, I want to have the best vendors, and I want to make sure I don't intend maybe to discriminate against anyone. But then sometimes it happens, we all have biases and the market has some biases so it's not only, sometimes it's not so simple to overcome. The first step that we need to take is to look at the data. Data will reveal us, it will unveil some of the situations we may not be able, were not for this. For instance, sometimes you have a disability policy and you are, for instance, you are recruiting people with disability, but maybe for some, I don't know, unconscious bias, you're only recruiting men with disabilities or men of a certain group with disabilities. So once you have data, you'll be able to make much more better decisions and decisions that are anchored in the reality and that will really make sure that you are approaching this in the most effective way. So all countries have census, all countries have, sometimes it's not that complicated, sometimes it's more complicated. It does require some more tweaking the data, more sophisticated analysis, but you can start with the basics and you can have internal data, but you also need data from the context where we are to make sure that we are looking at all groups and giving equal opportunities and reaching a broader audience. Once you have the data, then we'll have much more better evidence-based decisions. You'll be able to look at discriminatory practice because sometimes you don't know that there are discriminations or that you have a bias. You have data, you can start to think about how do you eliminate, how do you promote equality and diversity. And then that's also when you need not only quantitative data, not only numbers, but we really need to talk to people and understand what dynamics are in place, how things are, how such or such policies are playing out, why we are not able, we are maybe trying to do some affirmative procurement practices, but no one is submitting proposals. Why is that? We need to engage those groups and understand what are the barriers they're facing. Maybe it's a format, maybe it's process related. We have barriers, and then we'll be able to address that. So that's why I included listening to diverse voices inside and outside our business. Adjust to different cultural contexts. So some groups, for instance, will experience more challenges in using online tools. Maybe we have invested a lot thinking that would enhance, it would be easier and eliminate barriers. Sometimes it does. Maybe for that specific group that I have not been able to reach, was not the best opportunity. Maybe they are not able, they have, I don't know, digital literacy issues, and then you need to adjust. So the key word here, I think, is change, transformation, experimentation, not being afraid of experiment. And sometimes it doesn't work. So you need to revise and try again, and eventually we'll be able to transform the reality. And last but not least, we always need to evaluate, because as I said in the beginning, sometimes we mean well, but for some reasons, social dynamics are very complex. Sometimes we do adjust something, doesn't go as intended, and so we need data again, quantitative data, qualitative data, numbers, interviews, focus groups to understand why it hasn't worked, or maybe how we can, maybe it has worked and then we want to go to the next level, and then we always need to evaluate to make sure, and not only in our own perspective, but also to include those groups that we want to make sure that are represented in our business, to make sure that we are reaching our goals and that we have been able to recruit and retain different talent from different groups. You have been able to make sure that they can have progress in their career. You can make sure that you have the best vendors, the best suppliers, and then you are also looking at your customer pool that have been able really to eliminate whatever bias you had. So that for that, again, you need data, you need analysis, and you need a lot of dialogue and conversations. So that's it for now. I'll hand over to Miwa again. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ana Claudia. So we've heard from Ana Claudia on the basics of intersectionality. So I'd like to launch a little poll asking you, what are some forms of systematic barriers to equality that shows up in your workplace related to intersectionality? So I'll give you a couple of minutes while I transition to my slides. So if you can answer it, that'd be great. Okay, so we are getting some answers. Okay. Okay, so while you were answering these questions, let me kind of reiterate what Ana Claudia and Anna said in the beginning. So understanding intersectionality and implementing intersectional lens basically means that we are incorporating that special lens that or understanding that not all women are the same or we're not equals. We cannot implement a cookie cutter approach. No, neither there's no one size fits all. So there are some systemic challenges or barriers to equality that you're answering, but let me go over some. So women from diverse backgrounds with different identities and abilities experience systematic barriers related to, for example, as Ana Claudia mentioned, biases, stereotypes, and discriminatory policies and practices, and entering the workforce and advancing their careers. So data, unfortunately, often does not highlight or capture the ways in which multiple forms of oppression and discrimination intersect in the workplace and result in systematic barriers and unequal opportunities for women in all diversity. So meaningful action, rather than just symbolic or performative measures, are necessary for achieving truly inclusive workplaces. So these barriers are often result in these ways that you see on the screen. So I got a couple of examples from UN Women Report. So the first one is unequal labor force participation rates. So in the UK, Muslim women are 3 times as likely as women generally to be unemployed and looking for a job. In Canada, statistics from 2016 highlighted that unemployment rates among Black women were approximately twice that of non-racialized women. In fact, Black Canadian women are more likely to be represented in lower paid, precarious, and part-time work and experience long periods of unemployment and difficulty advancing in their careers. Then move on to the pay gap. So when you hear the word pay gap, you may often only think of gender pay gap. But in fact, there are pay gap within women that rises due to difference in race, ethnic background, and disability even. So in 2018, according to a survey, white women in the United States earned approximately 79 cents for every dollar earned by white men. So already women are earning lower. The same statistics highlighted that the earnings from Black women, American Indian and Alaska Native women, and Hispanic or Latina women equal 62 cents, 50 cents for every dollar earned by white men. In fact, on average, Black women in the US are paid 20% less than white women. So in Brazil, in 2019, the pay gap was 26% between white men and white women. But this gap reached 56% in between white men and Black women, illustrating the compounded effects of racism and sexism. Then also there is unequal access to leadership roles, efforts to increase women's representation in leadership positions, and boards tend to treat women as homogeneous group and therefore are not aimed at ensuring women in all diversity are represented. Right? In 2019, across the US, white women held approximately 32% of management position, while Latina women, Black women, and even Asian women made up only 4.3%, 4% and 2.5% respectively. And then, of course, there is this harassment in the workplace piece. Harassment and violence in the workplace come in many forms, including sexual harassment and even physical or psychological and emotional abuse. However, many women experience harassment and violence in workplace do not report these incidences, thus the actual rates may be higher than what is illustrated in the available data. And research shows that in many cases, young women, women of color, and women from LGBTQI plus community experience higher rates of sexual harassment in the workplace, like experiencing unwanted sexual jokes, unwanted touching, and even sexual assault. Lastly, there is the systematic barrier on discrimination and microaggression. Microaggressions undermine women's work and value in their workplace. Examples include automatically assuming a woman holds an entry-level position or a support role, and women who are members of the LGBTQI plus community are often subject to harmful and demeaning microaggressions. So I'm going to end the poll and see what you've replied. So you should be able to see the details. So people answered gender pay gap, A lot of people answered only a few women or colors with disabilities. So everything that I mentioned, traditional networking approaches that do not work for women. That's very interesting. Gender coding and job descriptions discourage women to apply. Gender buy-in, financial barriers. So these are all great answers, and we will share them when we are working on our blog, summarizing our findings. Oops, happened to my summarizing our findings for our blog post. So okay, my screen is paused, so let me go back to my screen. Okay. Now you should have my screen back. Okay, now let's move on. So as I said in my welcoming remarks, learning about intersectionality facilitates a deeper, let's say, deeper understanding of ways in which diversity, equality, and inclusion are relevant to each person in the organization. So this figure here shows, represent the wheel of power/privilege. So this is a simplified way to reflect on many intersecting identities that Ana Claudia mentioned, and how this is related to power structures. And this is a good way for workplaces to help people understand how social identities play into power and privilege. So basically the idea here is the closer you are to the center, the more power privilege you have. It also means that the further away you are from the center, the less power and privilege you have. For instance, let's look at some visible factors. If you're white compared to like darker colors of skins, you are closer to power. And then similarly, if you're able-bodied, you will have more power compared to someone with some to significant disability. So as you may have noticed, some of them, you don't have control over it. You're just born with it or grew up in such an environment and you don't have any control over it, unfortunately. So now let's take a look at another wheel. So this wheel is called the 4 dimensions of diversity. So this one helps one better understand and reflect each person's reality in the organization. So this model includes dimensions that shapes and impact both the individual and the organization. The 4 components of the dimensions of diversity include, first, personality. It includes an individual's likes, dislikes, values, and beliefs. Personality is shaped early in life and is influenced by and influences the other layers throughout one's lifetime and career choices. And there are these internal dimensions. These include aspects of diversity over which we have no control, as I just mentioned. This dimension is the layer in which divisions between and among people often exist, and forms the core of DEI efforts. So this may include the first thing we see in other people, such as race or gender, and on which we hold biases and make assumptions and judgments. And next, there are these external dimensions. There are aspects of diversity over which we may have some control over and which may have changed over time. For example, it could be marital status, education background, or geographic locations. And the next one is organizational dimensions that concern the aspects of workplace culture found in a work setting. So while the attention of DEI efforts has focused on internal dimensions, the opportunities for development or promotion are impacted by this layer as well. So while internal dimensions receive primarily attention in DEI initiative, the external and organizational dimensions often determine the way people are treated and who is considered a great fit for the organization. So this model increases employee awareness around the diversity of their colleagues, and it can be used for team building, for examining bias as a tool to introduce DEI and training. It can be also used in developing DEI strategy and pinpointing DEI points. So also it's an important reminder that diversity goes beyond internal dimensions, right? There's elements of external dimensions like income or educational background, and organizational dimension like seniority or work location can play a large role in determining how someone is treated, whether they feel that they belong on a team and there are opportunities for development, promotions, or recognition. So each dimension of diversity in this model is therefore important to consider when you're implementing policy or practices in your company. So now you've learned some theoretical background, let's move on to the business case. What are some positive impact of applying intersectional lens to foster D&I? So I have four key themes here. The first one, fostering DI, of course, helps increasing employee satisfaction and commitment. And then second, it helps increase collaboration and innovation, as when individuals feel more included at work, they report experiencing greater trust, increased engagement, and stronger collaboration with their colleagues. And then, of course, we should mention this enhanced recruitment of new talent, increased retention of employees, and decreased turnover. We have seen that inclusive companies are better at retaining employees with turnover rates 4% lower than those not acting on DEI. And lastly, it's very important for company. It also helps you to do revenue growth and increase productivity. So now let's dig a little deeper into the business case. So numerous studies show that there is a significant emotional tax on women of color in the workplace, as they are forced to be on guard against acts of discrimination and bias on a daily basis. What does that mean in contrary? So if they're relieved from these discrimination and bias, they will be able to perform better and showcase their true value and potential. Women who identify as members of the LGBTQ2+ community, for example, may experience both sexism and homophobia simultaneously, and not separately based on the combination of these two identities, and trans women may also face transphobia. Moreover, women of different faith, ethnicity, and/or cultural background, for instance, Muslim women wearing hijab, may experience the compound effects of Islamophobia, xenophobia, and gender bias, in addition to stereotypes about Muslim women. When companies are implementing DEI strategy initiatives and targeting efforts, thus, it's crucial to consider the entire picture of people in all forms of diversity. Next, I'd like to highlight that not all aspects of identity or intersectionality is visible, meaning not all intersectionality is visible in women, and people across genders may live with both visible and invisible intersectionality. And let me talk about disabilities in this section. So some invisible disabilities are increasingly referred to as neurodiversity. Neurodiversity includes, among the other conditions and traits, ADHD, being on autism spectrum, learning disability, high sensitivity or sensory processing sensitivity, and some mental health challenges, including depression and anxiety. This movement is focused on uncovering the strength of neurodiverse individuals and harnessing their talents to include innovation. Women may live with undiagnosed or even misdiagnosed neurodiversity, which can lead to depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and shame. Women with disabilities, in particular with invisible disability, or those who identify as neurodiverse, may face barriers to inclusion in the workplace that intersect with gender bias. For instance, labeling women making requests for accommodation as unreasonable or too sensitive. So some companies have been integrating neurodivergence into their DEI work, but unfortunately, this is not a broadly practiced behavior. We need to see more efforts from companies in this aspect. So companies that embrace the best practices from employing people with disability, both visible and individual, outperform their competitors. So Disability Inc.'s 2022 Diversity and Equality Index report suggests that the journey toward disability inclusion in the workplace starts with foundational programs and policies. So company needs to welcome and represent people with disabilities, of course. And once these foundational programs and policies are established, companies can move beyond accommodation to actively seek talent and celebrate the unique contribution of people with disability. Beyond hiring, employers should implement practices that encourage and progress persons with disability. So here are a list of 4 actions for attracting, hiring, and retaining and advancing diverse talent, from getting to equal to disability inclusion and advantage. And let me go over them very quickly. Firstly, employee, ensure that persons with disability are represented in your workplace and implement practices and policies that encourage progress persons with disability. Then enable them, provide them with accessible tools, technology, and a formal accommodation to cultivate awareness through training programs for those without disabilities to learn about these tools and accommodation. and engage with them and empower them through building awareness, through recruitment efforts, offer mentoring and coaching initiatives, upskilling and reskilling programs, and etc. So I hope you've learned some basics of intersectionality through my presentation and Ana Claudia's presentation today. I'd like to close off today's presentation by giving some examples or recommendation of creating an inclusive workplace culture. First of all, companies should examine all stages of employee lifecycle from a DEI and intersectional lens. Companies should incorporate DEI principles and objectives into performance and management process. You should review and diversify your recruitment strategies using DEI and intersectional lens. You should review current processes that limit opportunities from marginalized backgrounds and introduce methods to interrupt bias. You can also implement an inclusive workplace flexibility policy and strategy that really works. Lastly, celebrate the differences and give employees a voice. So after we hear from Kalpita from IBC, I'll take over the stage back to go through some of the WEPs tools to support your company's web journey. So please stay tuned, and thank you. Over to you, Ana and Kalpita.
Thank you so much for this overview, Ana Claudia and Miwa. We now have the pleasure to hear from Kalpita on some concrete actions. But before we hear what you've been doing, Kalpita, if you could explain a little bit from our audience that come from all over the world, how does intersectionality show up in India and particularly in your company? And what examples could you provide that illustrate the risk or the damage that a blind, non-intersectional approach could have for your company?
Sure, Anna. You see, India is a very diverse country. It is so diverse that every 200 kilometers, the culture changes, the language changes. We have about 22 official languages. Besides languages, what sets India apart from the rest is the various cultures and tradition across its region. Indian society is characterized by a complex hierarchy of social identities. And some of the examples of how intersectionality plays out in India would be gender and caste. For a woman from marginalized tribal community, she might face discrimination not only because of her gender, but also due to her tribal identity. Similarly, for a religion and class, a backward class individual might have limited access to education and employment opportunities due to both religious as well as class-based biases. Similar for a disabled LGBTQI plus individual might face the marginalization within their own communities and struggle for inclusion and mainstream society. Hence, when we speak and understand about intersectionality, we need to accept the fact that the history and geography of a person will always exist. What we can do is thoughtfully accept it and tailor it in right direction. With regards to Aditya Birla Capital, I would say we acknowledge intersectionality. We have crafted our policies in the same direction and always are at the forefront to adapt the changes which have been required. Hence, if a company wants to win over this lucrative market and expand its audience, it needs to localize its reach as much as possible. To give you a recent example, at Aditya Birla Health Insurance, what we did is we recently launched a life insurance product for the same-sex partners. This was an innovation in business strategy where the catering of the customer was for a diverse group. This in turn creates employer branding and gains business to company as well. With regards to the blind approach that you spoke about, blind approach means overlooking or ignoring the factor like DI. Hence, with a changing landscape, it could have a very serious damage and a risk. Something like, lack of innovation and creativity. A company will miss out on the diverse perspective and ideas. Each individual has diverse perspective and ideas, and they cater to the table very differently, which will have a cascading effect and will have limited innovation and creativity in case we don't value them. There can be reputational damage as well. As the world is changing, so are the people and the organization. With this change in the organizations who are not adaptable, they will face public scrutiny, right? There can also be legal and compliance risk as per the general country laws they have, right? For example, if in India you do not have a Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act as per POSH, it is mandatory for organizations to create an internal complaint committee, an ICC, and register complaint of women which are sexual harassment complaints. Also, awareness on sexual harassment is mandatory to be completed every year by employees. So there will be some legal and compliance risk as well in case you have a blind spot towards the EI and the intersectionality.
Great. Thank you, Kalpita, for explaining that. That helps everyone from other countries to also understand better the index, but also how to implement that these approaches in their countries. My takeaway from this, adaptability of a company is key towards all these different stakeholder groups. If you could give us some more concrete, you mentioned already some, but if you could give us some concrete measures of intersectionality in your operations, to give some concrete example, like running a team meeting or making everyone accountable, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, sure. So as I mentioned earlier that, we acknowledge intersectionality, and hence we believe that real acknowledgement is having some concrete measures in the organization. And there are some measures that we take in Aditya Birla Capital. You see, Anna, for an organization to be inclusive and create a culture of DEI, there needs to be a vision and a strategy that is followed by the leaders and which is then cascaded to the employees. It is important to foresee a company's journey in DEI, and that is not possible without building a strategy. At Aditya Birla Capital, we have 5 pillars of a strategy which we've created. To name, strengthening people capabilities, celebrating diversity, connecting with care, enhancing commitments, and communication and collaborations. Under celebrating diversities, we envision to include all diversities and subdiversities, which is the intersectionality, and provide necessary resources, trainings for the growth and development. To give you some of the examples, I would say that, we are working on a career restart program. We're launching a career restart program, which is going to offer opportunities to women who have previously worked but not and have taken a career break for any reason, like can be health, maternity, taking care of their elderly parents, etc. We're going to provide them a chance to re-enter the workforce with a planned approach of internship with the training resources that we will be giving them. One of the policies and one of the benefits that Aditya Birla Capital pioneers in the BFSI industry is the motherhood policy. Motherhood is, we provide a comprehensive support and policies to end-to-end assistance to women who are going to be soon to be mothers and mothers who are already during the post-maternity. What do? We do, travel support to and from the workplace. We have gifting vouchers. We give them extra leaves. We can give them extended maternity leaves. So we have a very comprehensive policy which sets aside and which supports these mothers. As a measure, what we can also do is, we can create employee resource groups, right? In an organization, we have employee resource groups for women. Have you thought about having employee resource group for the sub-diversities as well? Maybe not. We can create those employee resource groups for the sub-diversities as well, wherein they can network with each other and create, it can serve as a catalyst for advancing and strengthening your organization culture as well. The last one I would like to say is, the mentorship that we have. So we have a very strong mentorship program, which we take one of the concrete measures, this program basically gives platform for the women employees to be mentored by senior leaders within the organization. By establishing a structured mentor and a mentee relationship, we aim to foster professional connections, promote learning, and also provide and supportive environment for this woman to grow, for them to excel in careers. It is, just hiring an employee and, then giving them resources is not enough. It is also very important that how do you empower that particular employee and how do you develop? And that is how, this would be some of the concrete measures which we can take as an organization and which we follow at Aditya Birla Capital for diversities and sub-diversities.
Thank you, Kalpita. And I think the idea of employee resource groups is good. I know of companies that have actually leveraged those groups to also use them for consultation on various issues. And as I talked about earlier, know your employees is a good way to have these groups and have fora for discussion on different intersections. How is your company measuring the effectiveness of the intersectional approach that you're taking? And have you been able to measure the impact on, for example, sustainability, resilience, employee retention? There were a few points made by first Ana Claudia that it's important to track and measure, but also by Miwa, the importance of understanding the impact of these. So what have you been doing to measure and track the efforts?
Right. We do know that it is very important to measure anything to understand the success of it, right? And as per your question, we have three to four approaches that we do. One is the DEI maturity model. Now, Aditya Birla Group, okay, Aditya Birla Capital is a part of Aditya Birla Group. They have designed and formulated an internal DEI maturity model, wherein we assess ourselves and we know that at what level we are. We did that assessment and we know at what level we are, and we have prepared ourselves to reach the next level in the next 2 years. The maturity model helps organization in identifying the level of reach they have with the implementation of the DI interventions and what is more required to strengthen it and reach full maturity. So that is one way of measuring, where you are at your intersectional interventions. Second would be the dashboards and diversity metrics. We track diversity metrics such as representation of different demographic groups in gender, race, ethnicity, disability status, etc., across various levels and departments. This dashboard is digitalized across Aditya Birla Capital and also at a group level, wherein it has been shared with the CEOs and the leaders. Today, at a click of button, a CEO or the leader knows the diversity index of their department, knows the diversity index of their particular business unit. And they know that what is the next goal, diversity goal, or what are the next objectives by which they can strengthen this particular initiative in their in their unit. The other way we map is, by employee engagement scores, which are your ESAT scores. We conduct ESAT scores called as WEPs, and WEPs is our ESAT survey, where DEI is an important driver we track. Now, scores on this driver gives a clear understanding on success of DEI initiatives. Moreover, the satisfaction rate tracked by demographics, that is by gender, your age, your location, also gives an understanding on the satisfaction index of employees, which in turn helps with strategizing action plans for filling the gaps which we have identified throughout the survey. Retention rates, I would say, on a quarterly basis, we analyze the retention rates, we analyze the attrition amongst these diverse employees and groups compared to the overall workforce. We have one-to-one conversations with the employees who have, resigned, and we understand the reason, and then we see how can we come up with a solution for that reasoning. Higher retention rates among diverse employees can really indicate the effectiveness of inclusion efforts in fostering a supportive and inclusive work environment. The last bit which I would like to say is, doing deep dives. At a very large level, we are an organization of 50,000 employees, which is 15,000 in terms of millions. We talk to women employees at levels and in every department to learn what makes them stay at a company. Now, this includes getting the thoughts on how things are done now so we can find ways to make them better. We really listen and make sure that all women feel included and have chances to grow in their career. Our goal is to make sure every woman here feels respected, supported, and encouraged to reach our goals. Now, this is a data-driven approach will helps in identifying the strengths and areas needing improvement, ultimately driving continuous enhancement of DA report, efforts. So this would be some of the measures which I think can be.
Great. Thank you, Kalpita. And I think you were making two points. I mean, you made many points, but something that I took away, it is a journey. It is something that takes different steps in maturity. And also, I talked about know your employees, know your supplier, etc., but also know your data. Everyone in each department need to know your data. I think we come to the end of this segment. There are some questions coming in also from participants. So, Miwa, if you could quickly run us through some of the other slides, and then we go into a Q&A session.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna. And let me share my screen again. Here. So thank you, Kalpita, for explaining how intersectionality is being implemented in real life. So now I'll take over stage to introduce you to some of the practical WEPs tools to support your company's intersectional approach or journey that we may call it. So I'd like to highlight that some of the resources that I'll introduce today is only available to web signatories. What does that mean? So you need to sign on to the WEPs.org website to access these resources. So if you have the same email domain as the people who manage your company profile, you can create a login credential and access these tools. So as mentioned various times throughout today's event, incorporating an intersectional lens can help companies to foster diversity. So let's take a look at how to do so. So the first tool I'd like to highlight today is the WEPs guidance note on understanding intersectionality, targeting all forms of discrimination in the world of work. So this guidance note basically provides illustrative examples and recommendations for companies to address discrimination and foster diversity, equality, and inclusion with a specific focus on intersectionality. So I just highlighted some of the recommendation here. So the companies can take an action. For instance, companies can create and maintain inclusive corporate cultures. They can establish and implement anti-discrimination policies. They can ensure equality in recruitment and promotion. They can create safe and accessible workplace for all. And they can invest in company-wide training, as ABC was doing. And also they can ensure inclusive supply chain and marketing methods. So this one is available to the public, so you can just go to WEPs.org and access this guidance. So next one, guidance note is call to action on leveraging the WEPs framework to target racism and discrimination in the world of work. So targeting racism and discrimination is first and foremost the right thing to do, but it also has positive business impacts. So we've been mentioning the concept of diversity and inclusion a lot today, and this one talks about racism and how you can adopt these policies and practices into practice in your workplace. So there are many benefits of having a diverse workplace that I went through, so I'm not going to go into details, but it's also crucial to ensure that all women or women of all diverse and intersecting background, identities, and abilities are welcome and equally valued in their place of work. So to do so, companies and organizations can recognize and address the economic barriers that women of diverse and intersecting backgrounds with differing abilities and identities experience and adopt clear and actionable strategies for change. So specifically, this guidance note provides recommendation for actions fostering diversity for each of WEP's 7 principles covering workplace, marketplace, and community. So we recommend you taking a look at it. So next resource is our manual on diversity, equality, and inclusion. So this manual primarily aims to provide human resources and DEI professional in web signatory companies, both large and small companies, with guidance on design, implementation, and tracking progress against their workplace DEI policies and procedures and cultivate corporate DEI cultures. So this manual can help complement existing gender equality and women's empowerment initiatives in your company while moving beyond gender to integrate a more intersectional approach. So this one is only available for web signatories. So I drew some good practice and recommendation that you could use when it comes to applying an intersectional lens. So as organizations use this manual, they should consider context very carefully and integrate the intersectional approach into all their DEI work. So the first one, a group practice example, is to apply intersectional lens and remove discrimination that can be referred to when an intersectional lens is used to well-being and safety and decision-making process. So companies can collaborate with women and underrepresented groups to identify gaps in how workplace policies, programs, and processes or controls, design, and environment can reduce inequalities. So then there are several recommended actions for companies. First, identify and assess working conditions from the perspective of women and marginalized group. This can be done through quantitative and qualitative data collection method, as Ana Claudia and Kalpita mentioned, including hearing from lived experience of your employees. Companies shall collect data on various issues, which can include but not limited to workplace conflict, but such as incident, dispute, disciplines, and grievances, reports of bullying, harassment, or even micro inequities and retaliation, as well as resolution outcome to identify trends and impact, as well as workforce health, safety, and well-being. Then companies may address safety and security issues, planning for employee benefit packages and well-being options, including sick leave, vacation days or sick days, benefits, and other support from intersectional perspective. Third, companies should train your marketing team on stereotype, bias, and intersectionality. It's important to ensure that the whole marketing team receive training on gender stereotype, bias, and intersectionality, and consider requesting such a training to agency partners or vendors. So your intersectional lens can move beyond your workplace, but into your value chain and supply chain and more. And the next tool that can be useful for you is our checklist for gender responsive recruitment. So this tool allows companies to assess their current recruitment policy. Companies can use this checklist to verify if their current recruitment process is gender responsive. The checklist includes guidance on if the vacancy announcement is gender responsive, and if it had been communicated through gender responsive channels, if the shortlist and interview panels are gender balanced, and if the recruitment committee is trained in gender equality and is gender balanced, and etc. This tool is again only available for web signatories as well. Next, I'd like to close off my presentation with a very well-received webinar we held back in December 2023. Maybe some of you in the audience today have participated in this webinar to understand unconscious bias. So this workshop showcased what bias is and how and where it shows up and what you can do about it. So our goal was for participants to fully understand where bias comes from and what they could do about it. So this workshop was led by Nancy Rose from a web signatory company, Hexagon. So you may be able to see the recording if you have missed it. So thank you for your attention, and please do let me know if you have any question in the Q&A format, and I'll share the links to all the resources that I mentioned in the chat very briefly. Now I'm going to take over the stage to Anna again to lead us through the Q&A and roundtable session. Anna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Miwa. I hope everyone will be able to take advantage of these resources. We have received some really interesting questions. So I think each of you, I will take a few and then we can take a round. Kalpita, Ana Claudia, and Miwa, if you'd like to respond to those. There is some specific to you, Kalpita, but there might be also elements that others would like to respond to. The first one is about effective ways. What are some effective ways to interrupt bias on caste, for example, or to effectively drive inclusion? It is similar to the issues faced in the Caribbean, where the majority are Black, but people get preferences based on who is lighter in color, brown, and closer to white. So that's one. We have another question that is about, while you are providing a range of maternity benefits, equality may truly come in when the maternal status is not considered a factor during promotions, for instance. How easy is that to do beyond providing benefits in the workplace to make sure that it's not an factor? Kalpita is amazing. How has she and others gotten the executive support and budget to bring this action to life? Any specific recommendations? I think I'll stop there there's many more, but there's also one that came actually in the chat that I picked up in data privacy context. So somebody was asking about the GDPR, which is an EU privacy provision, but has also had ramification across the globe. If you have anything, I have some thoughts on that, so I might also come back on that. But let's take those questions to start, and then we'll go to the next round. Kalpita, would you like to start?
Sure, sure. I think mine was much more with regards with what is the first question, and we are.
The first one was how to effectively interrupt bias. I mean, the question was about caste, and this person thought that the caste system in India is very similar to in the Caribbean, where there is a nuance of a bias depending on the skin color. So just to kind of draw parallels with India.
Okay, okay. One of the what we need to do is, first is doing a self introspection of what are the biases that we have in our mind. That will only happen when you self assess yourself with regards to what biases you have, what are the prejudices which you have, and how will you be able to eliminate it, and why is it important. So that is one of the takeaways which I feel that I can give at the moment, is self introspection for an individual to overcome biases.
Thank you. And on the point on the maternity benefits, anything there that comes to mind in terms of also not making that a factor that would limit women for promotions?
Yes. So, a very valid question, because mostly what happens is there is a presumption and a perspective that, if a woman is going on a maternity, she will not be there for the next 6 months or 9 months. If there is an extended maternity leave in India, then, how will she able to take up the role if you're promoting her in this financial year or however. So I would like just to give you an example that at Aditya Birla Capital, while we were doing those deep dive discussions, which I spoke about, the one-to-one women connect, in that we had a lot of women coming up to us and saying that they did get promotions in ABC, even after they going on maternity leave. So there was one case wherein we had a woman employee who was being promoted just 10 days before she went on maternity for the next 6 months. So we are a very non-discriminative organization as such. And what organizations can do for this is having non-discrimination policies. Basically, then, having training and awareness, which is conducting training sessions for managers and employees about DEI and how non-discrimination can help create awareness on this. Flexible work arrangements which can support the employees while they are pre-maternity, before going on maternity break, so that they can give their 100%. And also a supportive environment with leadership commitment. Whenever we say that policies needs to be implemented, it is very important that your leadership is strong, because that is where the culture flows from, and that is where the policies and everything flows from. Today, if we say that Aditya Birla Capital is not biased in giving promotions to mothers or who are going to be mothers, that is because the leadership has the belief that this particular diverse group, or any diverse group for the fact, have the competencies, have the capability, have the merit, we will, give them the platform. So the leadership needs to be strong and they need to have a clear messaging.
So how do you get that? Somebody was asking how you get that strength in the leadership and the budget to get that buy-in.
Right, right, right. I would say like what one is, when you need to do something as strong as what we are doing here, is one to have a vision. Your DEI vision and your goals needs to be aligned with your company and organizational vision and goal. Until and unless they are not aligned, until and unless you don't show them what is going to be the fruit of having these practices, how it will create an employer brand in the organization, in the market for your organization, how it is going to bring various strategical approaches on the table when there are business meetings, how are different perspectives and diverse representations going to bring more business to the organization. Until that time, leadership will not give you that commitment. You need to take them into confidence that, look boss, if you have diverse perspectives and you have diverse representation, you are getting business, you are getting employer brand, you are doing some good work which is also helping your organization grow for this reason. So that is how it can happen.
Great, thank you. Ana Claudia, any reflections on this?
Sure. We have a similar situation in Brazil with regards to the first question, right? About the dark-skinned women and the bias. And what I had to add is that sometimes people think about affirmative action as something to support the group that is discriminated. Maybe they didn't have as much opportunity to grow or to develop. But in fact, when you use affirmative actions, what we are doing, we are compensating for internal biases. So sometimes what we can do, we have seen that we have affirmative action in education for 20 years now in Brazil. It's really effective. And I think it's also something that we can also replicate in different contexts, not only for public initiatives, but also in the private sector. So really ensuring that we have a place for candidates of African descent and darker skin, and making sure that we track and that whenever possible, we give them, I don't know, additional points, or so sometimes it's a reservation of vacancies, and that in the end, the results in education speaks for themselves, because the outcomes between white and non-white students is very similar, and it's the same in the labor market. So we cannot really eliminate bias in the whole, I mean, we can, but it takes many generations, and we need to do something before that. So one way to compensate for that is ensuring that we give additional opportunities that are specifically tailored for certain groups. That's what I would like to add.
Claudia. Miwa, anything to add?
No, thank you. I just wanted to emphasize the power of unconscious bias training that we actually hosted. So sometimes it's just in your brain, and brain just functions without you thinking, right? It's automatic biases. And we actually held unconscious bias training in many occasions, and we've learned that not a lot of companies are having that training on unconscious bias, and it really helps interrupt that, innate bias that you have, gives like an chance, like how Peter mentioned, that you can look at yourself and do like some self-assessment, and eventually lead to some ideas on how to break that into through this training. So I really recommend companies to incorporate unconscious bias training to all their employees. So
thank you, Miwa. I'd also like to respond on the question on the GDPR and privacy. I think it's, while the context is different in different countries, I think it's important that you are clear and that you explain what the data will be used and how the data will be protected by the company. For example, to be very explicit about that this data is to improve diversity and inclusion, complying with equal opportunity laws, enhance employee support programs, So it's very important that that's very explicit, but also that it's an explicit and informed consent to give this data and information, and that it's voluntary. So these are just some broad guidelines in terms of collecting this data among your employees and other stakeholders. But I have one question. So I know that we're running against time, but I think this question is very interesting because we talked about having employee resource groups for different intersection in different groups. But isn't that then contrary to the intersectionality to bring everything together? So if you have some ideas, I see Ana Claudia, you might already have reflected on that one. If we can start with you and then Kapita and Miwa.
Sure. Thanks for the question. It's indeed the type of dilemma we face when we're trying to enact change. But in my opinion, it's not in opposition to the idea of intersectionality, because when we work with intersectionality, sometimes we're very ambitious, and we should be. But the truth is, for each one of the categories we add, we need technical expertise, we need political will, management decision, we need concrete measures, revision of policies, maybe even of the infrastructure. So it does require some refinement, and it does make a difference whether, for instance, I work mostly with gender and race, if we start with gender or if we start with race. Both are possible, both are desirable, but it has some different implications and the rhythms and what are the first or the second or the third steps you're going to give. So for me, it's not in contradiction. You really need spaces where you need to refine, you need to dive deep in certain questions about, for instance, racial discriminations and then you move to how it affects to women. So if you have a group that is dedicated to racial discriminations, there's nothing preventing them to discuss gender discrimination and disabilities and other types of segments within that given unity. So in my opinion, you need that type of refinement, sophistication, and then you can broaden or maybe have other different groups that will expand on different groups. It's very difficult because sometimes that's the thing with intersectionality and discrimination and inclusion. Many people think it's just a matter of goodwill, but there's, as you can see when you hear Kalpita speaking, there's a lot of technical knowledge that goes into that. And the employee resource groups will have the opportunity to explore those and share with the company and maybe with other groups and bring some aspects to attention. So there is, for me, we need to understand that this is an ongoing process, incremental process. It's not, there's no silver bullet to say that this company never discriminates anymore if you got this figured out. No, that's not how it's going to do, but still you can have an ambitious agenda as long as you know that it's incremental. It requires a lot of work and revising and a lot of thinking and experimenting.
Thank you, Ana Claudia. Kalpita?
Yes, surely. So, I would like just to ask you all, like, why do we create ERGs? The reason to create ERGs is that as a human tendency, humans are normally being, they are very comfortable. They when have like people around them, and they open up when they have like people around them, right? Today, if we have employee resource groups, which is for women, in India at least, they wouldn't open up that much if the employee resource group is for all the employees. They wouldn't discuss about their challenges. They wouldn't discuss about their problem areas with an employee resource group which is having different diversities. Say, for example, with a PWD, each group or each diversity that we have their own challenges. They have their own areas where they need improvement on, and this is only being done when you have like people together, and they will get that particular development, they will get that particular guidance when you have people of the similar group of yours. And that is what happens, and that is the main reason of having an ERG of like people together. what I get from the question is the oneness, that, why when we speak about intersectionality is all oneness together. But oneness is any which way is there in an organization when you do it at a broader level, when you have focus group discussions with all the employees together or at town halls. That happens. But what is it that you're specifically doing for those specific particular diversities wherein they can open, wherein they can speak their heart out? That is why we create this ERG, so that they get a guided development and a guided path for their questions. That is what it is.
Thank you, Kalpita. Miwa, anything to add, or would you like just to close it out with your final?
No, I like to add a little difference in perspective, diverse perspective, that we need to see this diverse employment resource group as giving them a voice, right? As you've seen in my wheel of power, the farther away you are, the more marginalized you are from the power, which means you have less voice heard, in your organization, you have less chances to speak up and your opinions not get heard. So the more diverse of subgroups that you have, the more opportunity they would have, like how Peter said, they'll be able to talk about their challenges, and then they'll be later heard as a group. So it's a way of hearing voices to be a little louder, it's kind of like amplifying their voices. So if you could approach it that way, I think it wouldn't be like against intersectionality. So with that said, we are about to approach our end of the webinar. I just wanted to thank everyone for participating today and remind all the participants to fill out the evaluation survey before you exit. So when you exit, there's going to be a pop-up window with our evaluation questions. So please do fill that out, and we look forward to hearing more from you. Anything else to add from Anna?
Nothing else. We are over time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a great one, and see you next time. Next time we are talking about gender responsive marketing. So thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone. Anna Claudia, Kalpita, Miwa.